You have a certain legacy with Yashraj Films.
In that sense, had definitely a connection, to Yash Chopra. I mean, it was before I was born, and sadly, I never had an opportunity to meet Mr. Chopra myself, like personally.
How important do you think this sort of a milestone is it, considering that these are fascinating times?
There's hundreds of new content, released on all many different platforms every day. So it's difficult to find something that, grasps people's attention.
Do you find it fascinating, like a son becoming a father to his own father?
Very much so. And I also think that's a function of, of the way the relationship, sometimes between parents and children evolves, as the children become adults, in their own right.
You're a Shahrukh Khan fan. How was the experience of talking to him and getting his insights?
It was, I mean, it was incredible, like as the 15-year-old girl in me, fan in me, like was, could hardly believe it, that I was sitting 5 feet across from him, and had the opportunity to speak to him so extensively.
Do you feel that there's a possibility of a season two?
You'll have to whisper that to Netflix and see if they invite us to make a season.
Smriti, welcome on Connect FM Canada.
Thank you.
And congratulations for the phenomenal response to The Romantics. I'm sure that it must be overwhelming for you. My first question to you will be that I believe your father, Mr. Jag Mundhra, he released Kabhi Kabhi in a theater in Los Angeles in 1976. So, and that was the first Hindi film that was released in Hollywood, and since then, the entire silsila, as we can say, that it just carried forward. So, in a way, you have a certain legacy with Yashraj Films.
Yeah, I mean that film was my parents operated a single screen movie theater in Los Angeles and became among the first exhibitors of Hindi films in America. This was before I was born. One of the films was Kabhi Kabhi that was released at their theater. So yeah, in that sense, had definitely a connection, to Yash Chopra. I mean, it was before I was born, and sadly, I never had an opportunity to meet Mr. Chopra myself, like personally. But yeah, there is that connection.
We are living in very interesting times. The conventional sort of content that we used to have, either it is films or say television, for example, or documentaries per se. But now I think it's extremely democratic, because anything that is engaging is something that people are interested in, and that's what is happening with the Romantics as well. That it is content that somewhere it is connecting with people at a subliminal level, at an emotional level, at a nostalgic level. How important do you think this sort of a milestone is it, considering that these are fascinating times?
Yeah, I mean, if you're speaking in terms of content and the globalization of content, there's tremendous opportunity, for content to be accessible from all different parts of the world, in all different parts of the world, which is really exciting. But it also makes it all the more challenging to have anything break through. There's hundreds of new content, released on all many different platforms every day. So it's difficult to find something that, grasps people's attention, let alone, gets them to sit and binge, an entire series in short order. And, I'm very grateful, that The Romantics was able to do that. I didn't anticipate how much it was going to tap into that feeling, in people, and really tap into people's sense of nostalgia. And I think, if I could presume, I think it also has like reminded people of how much they love movies, which is always a nice thing.
The fascinating part is that it's not merely the number of stars that you managed to interview for the series, because if only that was the charm, then that's definitely not the reason why people are watching it in big numbers. It's the way you have structured the narrative. You're not getting swayed by the fact that you're having, say, an Amir or a Salman. So then there has to be a hierarchy. You have to give more footage to stars when it comes to their pedigree and their star status. That's not as happening. It's basically a narrative that is moving forward, and whoever seems to be saying something worthwhile just steps in as a character and then moves away. How important that structuring factor was it for you?
It was tremendously important. I think you cannot, ultimately it's the story that has to have the most sway, over who speaks and how much they speak and, on what topics they speak. That was really the most important thing to me. And, I wanted the series to feel like an oral history, like where it was, you hear people who have, you kind of see them not necessarily as big stars, where you're hanging on their every word, but you see them as people who are sharing their perspective from the front row of this collective history of Hindi cinema, and specifically through the lens of Yash Chopra and his films. So everyone, like in some cases, it was interesting to hear from people as fans of films and hear about the first time they saw certain films. Sometimes, of course, it was important to hear about people's experience making certain films, and their stories, their journey of making certain films. And sometimes it was important to hear perspective on the industry at large, and the evolution and the changes in the industry at large. But everyone had something to contribute. And I, kind of first and foremost wanted to look at each of these participants, each of the people that I interviewed, as almost like subject area experts. These are people who are in some regard experts, on Hindi cinema because they've been involved in it and shaped it, for so many years. So yeah, it was fun to speak to them on those terms, as opposed to like fan culture, of course there's always a little bit of that, too, but first and foremost, I think they are informed experts in their field, who have a lot of insight to share.
Another very interesting thing that I noticed, and that comes right in the beginning itself, uh, that somehow it's not an exercise merely in terms of pandering to egos or pandering to the fact that these are like really big stars. You're having those behind the scenes moment right in the beginning where Katrina Kaif is saying that you can ask me about New York, and I'm sure that Katrina must have said that. that's so Katrina. And Jaideep Sahani, that how much is the frame, and so Jaideep has those moments because Jaideep, he's a wonderful storyteller, but when it comes to conversations, he can be quite a handful, and several others. So that was funny, to start with. That so you get a feeling that it's not merely about how good everyone is, how great everyone is, and how everyone has to say the perfectly right things. Abhishek Bachchan is having fun at the expense of Aditya Chopra, that he's a rumor and all that stuff. So that in a way set the tone that it's basically more than merely an exercise in praising a production house and people. There's more to it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for noticing that. That was very much the intention.
Once again, when it comes to the structuring part, because in a way I feel that there are chapters in a way that you're attempting, that you also tapping the nerve in terms of what is going on in people's mind in today's day and age. Subjects like nepotism, for example, Bollywood, and why the people within the film industry they don't like the terminology. I would say these are, in a way, these are chapters, and it literally takes the story forward in a way. Was that the idea?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, the loose sort of arc of the series was chronological, over starting from the 1950s, through at least I would say the mid 2010s, after Yash Chopra's death. And then within that structure, we found opportunities to bring up these other themes, that became important, and sort of these conversations that bubbled up at the time. So, whether it's nepotism, or it's the conversation about the sort of corporate colonization, of many industries in India, post liberalization, and how that sort of wave, was coming towards the Hindi film industry. These are all things that are tied to uh, these were conversations that were sparked by what was happening at the time, and so that's sort of how we wove it into the series as well.
Right. Now, when it comes to various facets as far as, say, starting point, I think the germination will be Yash Chopra. Uh, and you set the tone right in the beginning, because I think anyone who relates to a legacy, um, and legacy like Yash Chopra's, for example, it just cannot merely be about entertainment. It is also about the thought process of that man, what he believed in, his worldview. The way you talk about Dhool Ka Phool and the song that the Hindu banega na Musalman banega, insan ki aulad hai insan banega, and that clip from Dharmputra right in the beginning, that tells you about the man, his ideology, what he believes in. And I think that, do you feel that percolated right till the end, and even now, in terms of having a wider worldview, having that secular worldview where anyone and everyone can assimilate in?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that tracks with what I've learned about Yash Chopra's personality, just very loving, very gregarious, very inclusive, without any sense of hierarchy among, his peers, just somebody who loved people and loved being around people and loved the process of creation, and the beauty of creation. And I think, that's reflected in his earlier films that spoke to the politics of the time. And his view on that, was, I think he aspired, and idealized a secular, inclusive, India. And, I think that's a very admirable, perspective. It's a very human perspective, where you kind of look at the things that unite us, as opposed to the things that divide us, and try to remind through his art form, which was cinema, about that, which that song is perfect reflection of.
Right, and so when it comes to politics, it's not merely about, say, political element. It's also about politics of relationships, and I think that is something that Yashji delved into uh, again and again. Be it Kabhi Kabhi, be it Silsila, be it Chandni, be it Lamhe. Do you find that fascinating in a way, taking complicated subjects?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like he was so ahead of his time, in terms of how he approached the idea of human relationships, of all kinds. I mean, it was never, no one was ever villainized, as such, or victimized. His characters had a lot of agency, though they were, in many times flawed and made, not the best choices. He always portrayed them with a lot of sensitivity and a lot of, uh, you know, um, a lot of heart. And, you never got the sense that he judged any of his characters, which I think is sort of what makes his work, feel so ahead of its time and also feel timeless.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that you've not spelt out anywhere, but I feel that it's the undertones of that entire element is running right through the documentary, and that is this unique relationship that father son tend to have, which is one of reverence, mutual respect, and love, and at the same time this quest in the son, in a way, to find his own footing, to find his own voice, which is different from his father, and that's something which is prevalent right through the documentary as far as Mr. Aditya Chopra and Mr. Yash Chopra is concerned. They differed with each other. Be it Lamhe, they differed with each other. There were other films that they were not on the same page. And interestingly, as far as Lamhe is concerned, Yashji was proven right in the longer run, even though Aditya Chopra was proven right as far as box office is concerned. Did you find it fascinating, those undercurrents?
Very, very much so. Very much so. I think there's such a there's a beautiful relationship there between Yashji and both his sons, with Uday as
Right.
well, and Adi, and also his wife, who he really
Yeah.
was a significant creative uh, uh, contributor, to his films and a confidant. So I think his relationships with those who he loved, was closest to, his immediate family, was really beautiful. And I think it really enriched and informed his work, in many ways. But particularly with Adi, I think they kind of went, you can sort of sense when their relationship shifted from sort of father son, mentor, student, to colleagues, and they had different styles, but I think they both, especially, with Aditya, I think, he has immense respect for his father, immense respect for his father. You feel it, even when he speaks about him. And though he, charted his own path and his own course, and maybe sometimes did things differently than how his father would have done, I think he never lost sight of the fact that his father, was a sort of creative guide, and someone who, wasn't where he was by accident, and there was some sort of, valuable, insights that he also had. So it was an interesting balance, between the two of them. And I think they made each other better filmmakers when they became colleagues.
Absolutely. There's this very poignant moment when Aditya Chopra says something, and he says that there was a point of time when Adi became a father to me and my father.
Yeah.
I felt there's a film over there. This mere moment, and the way he says it, and the fact that it would make for a fantastic film. Actually, I feel the entire father son and the entire relationship. Do you find it fascinating, like a son becoming a father to his own father?
Very much so. And I also think that's a function of, the way the relationship, sometimes between parents and children evolves, as the children become adults, in their own right. It's certainly something that I've experienced, especially, I think this is something that I see in my own relationship, with my own mother, and now I have my own children, and our relationship has evolved, where now, I'm able to, also, I'm not the child she needs to discipline, as much anymore. But I'm still always her child, so, we still always have that relationship. But like now, I'm able to take care of her, she's able to, seek my counsel sometimes, but always, I think there's a wisdom that your parent has, that no matter how old you get as a person and how mature and how successful or whatever it may be that you get, there's always a wisdom that you need from your parents. And I think that's something that, you see in that relationship. And, like Uday said, that their relationship between the three of them also evolved, and maybe in some ways, Uday and Yashji were more like, and they could relate to each other on a more emotional level, and they bonded, at a time when they each maybe needed emotional support. So, I think it's that evolution of a relationship, between parents and children is a really beautiful thing. And as long as like there is mutual respect there, which obviously there is, in this family, I think it's a really beautiful thing.
Right. I believe you're a Shahrukh Khan fan. How was the experience of talking to him and getting his insights? Because he was extremely close to Yashji. In fact, I was present in that conversation that Shahrukh had with Yash Chopra ji at YDF on his birthday, and I was having this nostalgic feeling when I watched that clip, that we don't realize that we become part of history, and we only realize it later. How was the experience of collaborating with Shahrukh Khan?
It was it was incredible, like as the 15-year-old girl in me, fan in me, like was, could hardly believe it, that I was sitting 5 feet across from him, and had the opportunity to speak to him so extensively. But, he's also just incredibly insightful, and had so much to share, just not only about his own career and the films that he was a part of, but about, sort of the collective history, of Hindi cinema and films, that he saw when he was a child, and that really impacted him. And, changes in the industry that he witnessed over, his decades long career. Yeah, it was really, it was great to speak with him in an environment where he wasn't, promoting a film, or, there was no kind of, it wasn't like a few quick bites here and there. We just were able to have a long talk, about this thing that clearly, has defined his life and he's so passionate about, which is cinema.
Great. Now, so Smriti, one thing that I felt very strongly about was uh, I genuinely feel that there is a season two in this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll just give you a few thoughts that I had. Yash Chopra ji collaborated with Shiv Kumar Sharma and Hari Prasad Chaurasia. I think maybe he's the only director in the history who has collaborated with classical musicians like these, and they've had some really phenomenal films between them.
Yeah.
Then beat I think Kabul Express was a very important milestone. Beat New York. Ek Tha Tiger, it had some of the, I think it's one of the biggest hits as far as footfall is concerned in the history of Indian cinema. Fana is something that it's a huge, I think, milestone as far as virus is concerned. And then now Pathan, the way it has written history. Do you feel that there's a possibility of a season two?
You'll have to whisper that to Netflix and see if they invite us to make a season.
I'm sure that they would love to, because the response for this is phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah. It's also, I think in many ways it's set a very high bar, so we'd want to make sure that anything that we do, if we do anything as a follow-up, that it meets that, it doesn't overstay its welcome, that it meets that bar. But certainly, you're absolutely right. There's a lot more to unpack, in that story. And also just more broadly, so many more ways to tell the story of Hindi cinema and Indian cinema through other filmmakers and other regions and things like that. So, yeah.
Okay, and would you like to direct a feature film?
Certainly. Yeah, I would love to.
So do you have a script something? Is there any plans that you have?
Not at the moment, but definitely something I have my eyes open for. And, if anybody wants to hire me to direct a feature film, please get in touch. I would love to do that.
Mr. Aditya Chopra mentioned about that he wants to have a theme park about the film industry in India. And I think that's a phenomenal thought, because the sort of popularity that Hindi films have is phenomenal, and they can have wonderful stuff in Dubai, for example. Why not in Mumbai? Do you think it's a good idea to have a theme park?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I'm equipped to weigh in on that. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure yeah. In theory, it's a great idea. The more we have that entertains, entertains us, the better. But I'm sure that there's, municipal concerns and, logistical concerns and things like that. So I don't know if I think but what I like about that idea is that it just speaks to a bigger vision, that Aditya has and YRF has in terms of its, the mark that it wants to leave, I don't think, I think the vision always gets bigger, no matter how many crores a film grosses, no matter how much success there is, there's always some bigger vision on the horizon. And I appreciate that. I think that's what makes that studio so enduring, and that makes Adi such a visionary leader.
Right. I've seen several of your interviews, and you've been relentlessly asked upfront about doing an interview with Aditya Chopra. So I did not start with that intentionally. But I would like to share one sentiment that I had after I watched the series, that here is someone who's extremely articulate. He's not camera conscious at all. He speaks very well. My thought was that I just couldn't understand that why was he away from the media glare for so many years. It's baffling. I've seen him once in YRF, and he was coming from the stairs and he saw me and then he went back. So I don't know why but I can claim to a lot of people that I've seen him. So do you find it baffling in a way that someone who's so articulate, why do you have to be so away from the public gaze?
I don't find it baffling at all. I mean, I don't think that a need, or a desire for privacy means that you have trouble articulating yourself. I think it just means that there are certain things you value more than hearing the sound of your own voice. You know, it's. I think he values privacy, and I think privacy for many years was, you know, was really key to his success. You know, because he was so um, adamant, you know, that he be able to always stay connected to the audience that he makes his films for. You know, be able to sit in the theater and watch a film, you know, with an audience. And, you know, if the whole world knows your face and knows who you are, that becomes more difficult. And I also think he's just a very focused, driven person. You know, I think the thing he cares the most about is making movies and, you know, delivering those movies to an audience and, you know, continuing to hone his storytelling abilities, you know, and build his empire. And, you know, I think, you know, it especially now, like having spent time with him, it makes perfect sense to me why you know, he took such pains to stay out of the spotlight. I don't know if he'll ever be able to do that again, but now I might have ruined that for him. But yeah, I think it's, you know, I think it's a good lesson that one, that, you know, you really can, people can stay anonymous, you know, if they want to. You can, you know, live your life without constantly sharing your point of view, you know, on every single thing, which is a valuable lesson, especially in the age of social media. But also that just because one is silent, you know, or refrains from spouting opinions doesn't mean they don't have them, or they don't have valuable perspective to share. So I just think we're lucky that we had the opportunity to, you know, hear him speak, because he has so much to share.
All right, one last question. Now, interesting part is, and it's fascinating as well, that the Romantics, it's being loved not merely by Indians or the diaspora. In a very short span of time, and I think as the days go by, considering Netflix has such a tremendous reach, it's in a way becoming, and it will become, like a case study as to what Bollywood or the Hindi film industry is all about. And it's happening at a time when Triple R has just made a big splash at the Golden Globes. It's going at the Oscars now. Do you find that fascinating, that it's not merely about diaspora anymore? This is global now.
Definitely. I mean, I think, you know, for many of us, we've been waiting for this moment. You know, I think it's important, you know, to distinguish that the need from the want. You know, I don't think we need the validation, you know, of people outside of ourselves. You know, we are enough in number. We are enough in, you know, cultural capital and cultural power, just, you know, within ourselves, you know, with the South Asians, you know, worldwide. You know, we're a plurality of the world's population. So, you know, we don't need anybody else outside, you know, to validate what we're doing, or to participate, um, you know, in the economics of our film industry, certainly. But it is nice, you know, it is nice when your culture can be shared and appreciated, you know, um, with other people around the world. You know, I think that brings greater understanding. It brings cultural appreciation. It brings, you know, collaboration. So I think it's a really nice thing. But I don't think it's something, you know, I don't think it's something that we need as validation.
Fantastic, fantastic. But I don't think it's about validation. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's content. It is entertaining. It is engaging. So it is worth the time for anyone who's going to be watching it. So I think it's all about something that communicates in an interesting and absorbing manner. So I think maybe it's more than that. So thank you very much, Smriti. Lovely talking to you, and congratulations for this fantastic series and documentary, and would love to see the part two of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Great to meet you. Great talking to you.
Thank you. Good night.